Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to invite to the podium Ontario's Minister of Finance, the Honourable Dwight Duncan.
Thank you, Tom, for that very kind introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us here today. There are a lot of you, and I appreciate that. I believe it's a sign of the importance that we all place on ensuring a bright future for Ontario. You know, July 1st, 2010 was a big day for me. Most of you probably think I'm saying that because that's the day the HST and the tax cuts and our tax plan for jobs and growth took effect. However, it's also the day I began my journey to a slimmer, healthier lifestyle. I serve as proof that belt tightening doesn't have to be all about cutting back. I did cut out late night pizza. I rarely eat dessert. However, I've added more fruit, more vegetables, and exercise. I focused on the things that contribute to a better future and eliminated the things that don't. Since then, I've shed 54 pounds in 4 suit sizes. Despite this, I still have more to do. I have to lose another 30 pounds to get to the upper end of my normal weight range for my height. That's my goal, that's my personal challenge, and I've achieved those results through hard work, determination, and smart choices. And what applies to fitness applies to finance too. A balanced approach. No gimmicks, no shortcuts, no fad diet. Smart choices and hard work. That's why, as Ontario confronts the challenges brought about by the current economic environment, we have to work together and apply the same kind of determination to the choices that we make. Over the last generation, and then some, the fundamentals that have shaped Ontario's economy since Confederation have changed dramatically. Protected domestic markets have been replaced by open markets and global competition. Ontario families and communities that have relied on manufacturing and forestry can no longer count on guaranteed growth in those sectors to create jobs. Economies that are driven by abundant natural resources are taking on roles of much greater importance around the world and right here in Canada. When you look at the entire global economy right now, what you see is uncertainty. Christine Lagarde, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, said recently, "The global economy has entered a dangerous new phase. There is a path to sustained recovery, but it is narrowing. To navigate it, we need strong political will around the world, leadership over brinksmanship, cooperation over competition, and action over reaction." She's absolutely right. Strong, steady leadership is required to balance eliminating the deficit while supporting jobs and growth and providing the best public services. Within the global context, regional economies have their own distinct stories to tell. In many European countries, interest rates remain at unsustainable levels, putting new pressures and stresses on both governments and people. In the United States, political gridlock led to a credit downgrade because political parties could not reach an agreement on how to move forward on deficit and debt challenges. Here at home in Ontario, we are still closely linked to the U.S., which continues to recover slowly from the recession. The Canadian and American dollars at par put additional stress on our ability to export to that important market with a severely thickened border. Despite these challenges, Ontario is on a path of renewed growth and will continue to create jobs. Ontario GDP grew in the third quarter of 2011 at 2.7% on an annualized basis. After creating more than 121,000 net new jobs in 2011, employment remained steady in January of this year. Ontarians have made tremendous progress over the last 8 years. We have modernized the tax system by introducing the HST and bringing sweeping tax cuts for both people and businesses. The tax plan for jobs and growth has positioned Ontario for future growth. Our province, our home, is recognized as a good place to invest. It is the second most attractive place for foreign investment in North America, said Forbes magazine, among others, and they credit that tax plan for that fact. To build on this growth, Ontario must confront another challenge. In 2009, the budget took the bold step of transforming our tax system into one of the most competitive in the world. Ontarians recognized the need for this change and re-elected Ontario Liberals because of this leadership. In fact, we're the only government in Canada and from quite a few other countries to be re-elected after implementing a value-added tax. We've also been able to turn around healthcare and education and are now getting world-leading results in both areas. Now, we must transform the way public services are delivered and eliminate the deficit. Before the global recession hit, Ontario had balanced 3 budgets in a row. Then, just as the recession took a bite out of household budgets, it took its toll on the provincial budget as well. The McGuinty government, like many others, invested heavily in stimulus, building roads, bridges, and other important infrastructure. These investments serve both a short-term goal and a long-term interest. First, they reduce the impact of the recession on our families by protecting and creating jobs. Second, the infrastructure we have been building will continue to make Ontario's economy more competitive. All this extra help for families, combined with weaker revenues, created a deficit which is now projected to be $16 billion. Today's fiscal challenge is ours to face, yet it's not entirely new. Governments of all political stripes over the last generation, 21 years, have accumulated debt. In fact, 4 governments of 3 parties since 1990 have done so. In that generation, net borrowing in Ontario has decreased only once, and that was because of accounting. Governments took this path because they could rely on economic growth to keep the debt to GDP ratio sustainable. Ontario is a low-tax province. This is a trend that has been developing for many years. In fact, tax revenues are 13.6% of gross domestic product, almost 15% lower today than they were in 1994. Still, we've been hitting our expense targets. Over many years, Ontario has built expertise at delivering quality public services with low administrative costs. Ontario spends the least per capita among Canada's 10 provinces on program services. Last year, we reported spending growth had been cut to about 4%. So far this year, we are tracking to keep growth in spending to about 2.5%. The challenges are, in this environment, to eliminate the deficit and deliver the quality services that families need. We will meet these challenges. That's what strong leadership is about. We will build on the tax reform, infrastructure investments, and other actions that Ontarians have already taken to increase the prospects for economic growth in Ontario. All of us has a role to play. Politicians of all stripes, doctors, nurses, teachers, public servants, and everyone in Ontario who delivers or receives a public service of any kind. All of us, together, must turn our attention to the way government delivers services to Ontario families. When 1/2 of all government spending is invested in the wages and salaries of workers, it is not possible to reduce spending without addressing salary, benefits, and pension expenditures. As Premier McGuinty said last week, we cannot guarantee there will be no interruption in public services. We can, however, guarantee that our government will be firm and fair so that we can eliminate the deficit. That is something that is in everyone's interest. In the 2011 budget, we outlined the need to keep the rate of spending growth at 1.4% annually for the next 6 years. We also at that time committed to reforming public service delivery to help us meet our targets. And we appointed the Commission on Broader Public Sector Reform, chaired by Don Drummond. We know Mr. Drummond's preliminary advice is that spending growth may need to be reined in even more and held at 1% as a result of deteriorating revenue projections since the time of the budget. When this information became public, a lot of people did some back-of-the-envelope math that led to questions. Questions about spending growth in key priority areas like education and health care, and questions about cuts that may come to other ministries. As Finance Minister, there are questions that I asked. What will happen if we don't restrain growth in spending to those levels? Will Ontario be able to deliver world-class public services to the people who rely on them? Will Ontario be able to meet the targets outlined in the balanced budget plan? So here's the answer. Last week, you heard the Conference Board of Canada estimates that in 2017-18, Ontario's deficit could still be $16 billion. Drummond looks at the pressures on Ontario's economy and analyzes the status quo. If the trend continues, if the delivery of public services is not transformed, he believes the deficit could track to $30 billion in 2017-2018. And we've done some math as well. Had the NDP been elected and implemented their platform in the last election, the deficit would be well over $30 billion. I say that at best because no one knows. They didn't cost a whole range of their promises for new tax expenditures, tuition frees, etc. Based on Mr. Drummond's analysis, if the Hudak Conservatives had been elected, the deficit would have been $36 billion. These differing numbers show us two things. One, economic forecasts and analysis are not absolutely definitive since they rarely come to a consensus. Two, despite the differences presented by various projections, it is clear that this serious challenge requires a serious plan. As Peter Drucker said, plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. It's time to build on the work we started 2 years ago. And we're eager to move forward because working hard and solving problems is the Ontario Liberal way. Our plan is fair, our plan is reasonable, and our plan ensures that everyone has a role to play. We will continue to review all of our assets to ensure that they are delivering the greatest value to taxpayers. We will build on reforms to the way government operates to ensure that Ontario families receive the best public services possible, and we will continue to slow down the rate of growth in government spending. The McGuinty government will hit its targets on the way to eliminate the deficit by 2017-2018. And here are 3 examples of steps we are taking to get there. First, the current headquarters of the LCBO was built in 1954. The LCBO has grown since then, and to accommodate staff, it rents additional office space elsewhere. The property includes the head office, a warehouse, and retail store, all sitting on some of the most valuable real estate in the country. We can make better use of the property to maximize the value of this taxpayer asset. We have directed the LCBO to sell its headquarters property. A flagship retail store will remain in the vicinity, while head office and warehouse will be moved. A new development project and new businesses on the site will create jobs. A new modern facility will help the LCBO realize operational savings as a result of the modernization, and we will generate more than $200 million from that step. Second, we've improved the performance of Service Ontario. Ontarians have taken advantage of the introduction of money-back guarantees for birth and marriage certificates with a success rate of about 99.8% last year. Customer satisfaction has increased from 75% in 2008 to 93% in 2011. Two-thirds of Service Ontario is already privatized. When an Ontarian goes to a Service Ontario office, it costs 5 times as much as a transaction performed online. Obviously, greater efficiencies can be gained by driving customers to a lower-cost online channel. However, building that capacity requires significant capital investment. In the current fiscal environment, this kind of investment is not a priority. So, we will use private sector capital to keep taxpayer dollars devoted to public services that are of the highest priority, like schools and health care. The government will continue to set standards for customer service, but we will allow the private sector to deliver those services, and they will deliver them in a more cost-effective manner. Third, since 1998, Ontario taxpayers have been subsidizing horse racing in Ontario to the tune of $345 million a year through the OLG Slots at Racetrack program. To put that annual subsidy into perspective, it's more support than we provide for water protection or road safety. It's also more than 10 times the amount BC, Alberta, and Manitoba combined provide to that industry. That kind of money would pay for over 9 million hours of home care, or insulin pumps and supplies for 5 years for almost 17,000 people. We are reviewing every program, every asset, and every function of government. We are considering if government should be in a specific line of business or service delivery. If not, we will get out of it. If we should be there, we will transform operations to ensure that Ontario families are receiving the best possible service. And if an asset is not delivering the highest value to taxpayers, we will take action to ensure that it does. We are lowering the rate of spending growth, and we will continue to meet our targets on the way to eliminating the deficit. Later this week, we look forward to receiving Mr. Drummond's report. It will help inform the 2012 budget as we move forward. We also look forward to hearing ideas about solutions and seeking the input of all Ontarians, including the opposition parties. Given the analysis, given the fiscal situation facing today's generation and tomorrow's, continued demands for short-term tax giveaways that undermine our long-term economic growth are not only unreasonable, they are irresponsible. Now, all of this is not to say cuts aren't needed and won't happen. They are and they will. The more we are able to transform the way we deliver public services, the less we will have to cut. And that means we will be better able to protect schools and health care. The public ultimately wants responsible spending, but they also believe that government has a role to play in their lives. Striking this balance in today's economic